introduce myself.
Welcome on, folks. Thank you very much, everybody, for calling so early. All of the noises were happening. Fuck me sideways and call me Betsy. That was intense.
It's been a while.
It's been that long. Hasn't been that long now. It was Wednesday, and me and you were playing Resident Evil, so it hasn't been that long now. Welcome on, folks. McKinn's, what is happening? Hook, Boichi. What's the story? Simply Mayhem, welcome on. I was on Simply Mayhem stream earlier on today. If you're not following her, please do so. Absolute legend. Really, really high energy, really good vibes. Definitely give a follow. But how's everybody's Saturday going? Mine's is a bit hectic at the moment because I sat all yesterday replacing a lot of the parts on my computer, and when I went to stream, a big chunk of it just didn't work. Thank you folks for checking in as well. As you all know, you'll level up every time you check in and chat, and the bar above me is the boss bar, and that'll tell you how close you are to beating the boss at the end of stream. It's been several days, okay, it has been, but me and you text, me and Hook are best friends in real life, so we text each other every day. Level 21, Beastmaster, ooh. I'm just going to finish up my coffee here while I'm watching that there. Let's go. So, maybe cup a second. No, I don't like it. Sit behind me. It's dirty. It's dirty. I don't like it. Don't you be hugging me. I'm watching you, Hook. But welcome on, folks. Yeah, so we're going to be playing more Silent Hill 2 tonight. I don't know how far I've left in it. My dog is sitting staring at me. The one thing I can't get working is the actual dog's camera. For some reason that has stopped working, and I think I might have dropped it or something when I was moving everything about. Change your background a wee bit? No. I don't think so. Oh, actually, my son was looking to write something the other day and he needed a book to use. So what he did is he lifted this book and knocked everything else over. So I came home from work and everything was just lying on the floor. So I've had to pick everything back up, and it might not be in the exact order it was before. So my son was a silly sausage and decided just to throw everything off there because he just loved it, the closest thing to him, and just wrecked everything. But it's grand. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I mean, I can't really complain about it. It's all his daddy's nerdy stuff. Flemish! Kind do you call this? What kind do you call this? Fuck, that's loud. I know. I thought I normalised that. Clearly I didn't. That's why it looks different slightly. Evening. What's a crack? What's a crack? Flim flam bam blam. You must a wee intro, but I now have a van that says Flemish loves RE6, drives past as well, along with Hook and Ready. If you're not following Flemish as well, please do so as well. Me and him give each other grief, but he puts on a brilliant stream. And he's good crack, really good crack. I love the fact that he gets so annoyed and wound up about games. And then I pick at him, and then he cracks up with me, and I'm like, yeah, I seen it. Love the van. Love the van. So Flemish has a van. Oh, I'm just going to quickly lie back and make the van go across the screen because I think he needs to see it. He needs to see the van. He needs to see the van, doesn't he? He needs to see the van. Just 1 second. There we go. Driving these wee van. Eating these pineapples. Eating these pineapples. Flemish, the Pineapple King. 10 out of 10. I know. I made that today and I was like, yes! Yes! With me pineapples too, I know. Now, right about doesn't know the pineapple story. Flemish was eating pineapples once on stream, and because the actual stream preview of his stream was just a picture of him going, it was forever kept and immortalized. Good Wing, welcome on first time chat. What is happening? How are you getting on? What is the story? Do I even have that picture? I have that picture somewhere. If I go over to the game screen, I think I have it. Is it this one? Yeah, so this is the picture that came up for Flemish whenever as a stream preview. And I think it perfectly encapsulates everything to do with Flemish, and I love it. It's my favorite. It's my favorite. I'm going to get that framed, and I'm going to get a picture of Hook with his orgasm face and Flemish with that face, and put them side by side and hang them up in my house. So when people come over, I have to explain what this is about. And even when I explain it, they're still going to judge me harshly, and I'm going to love every minute of it. Going to love it. Pineapple King, thank you very much for the buddies. For the first time in years, I had a pineapple and was on stream, and the VOD was me mouthing a pineapple. It was beautiful. It was phenomenal. It was everything we wanted it to be. And more. You have to. I know. I'm just going to get them printed out and framed, and I don't care who judges me and who sees it. I'll just say, oh, that's my uncle. My uncle Flim Flam Bam Lam. It was a perfect storm. I love the fact that I just logged on my PlayStation and this motherfucking game has popped up. This game, which isn't even out yet and has already made its budget back. This game that they're selling physical boxes, but there's no physical disc in it. It's a download code. Kira, what is happening? What is the story? You lurk away, you absolute king, yeah. You absolute king. Hope you're doing alright with the weather as well. So what I was chatting to Hook about it, and I thought it'd be a bit of a laugh. The only other game really going up against Grand Theft Auto, because every other game released moved to September and October to avoid GTA. The only one that's brave enough to go up against it is Barbie Rewind. And I'm tempted to buy it and stream it, just because fair play to you. Fair play to you for giving it a go and going up against Grand Theft Auto. I want to support that developer. I want to support them in all their endeavors, because they had the guts to do it, where everyone else, even Call of Duty, ran away and hid from Grand Theft Auto. But Barbie Rewind? No, Barbie Rewind's got balls. Let's go. I'm all for that. So am I. It might be an awful game. It might be a terrible game. It might be a horrendous game. But I'll enjoy it and I will sing its praises. Because they did it. They did it. No one else could do it, but they did. But yeah, it is mental. Like, they're scalpers. buying copies of Grand Theft Auto, even though it's a digital game and it will not go out of stock, so it makes no sense. I don't know. I haven't pre-ordered it. I can understand the point of pre-ordering it if you want maybe the Ultimate Edition or if you want to pre-download it because it's a sizable game. Cody, welcome in. Well, look at these absolute legends coming on and showing. Oh, these are my favourites. Stacey was telling me someone £500 worth of copies to scalp it, and it makes no. There's Sierra herself. Welcome in. Do it, lady. Indeed. Hello. Welcome in. Like I assume there were the physical copies. They probably will be. I think there's a rumor that a few months after release or a few weeks after release, there will be a disc version that will come out, but it'll just have a download code just like the other one. But it's not going to sell out. It's not going to be like the previous one where it sold out and you couldn't get copies of it anymore. So it baffles me. I'll probably pick it up when it comes out, and the hype will get to me. But you know what? We'll let them do what they're doing. It's grand. Fair play to them. But there's too damn far down the line. Anybody who wants to play it will have done so at release, for the most part. Yeah, that's true. I'm not afraid of spoilers as well. I'm an old man. I don't have the time to spend 28 hours playing Grand Theft Auto so I can get through it before everybody else. I did that back in the day, but not anymore. It was £500 worth of digital copies. What an absolute silly sausage. If it's like GTA 5, they get their money out of me like at least twice. I think about 4 times, because we'll be buying the release copy, the PC version, the enhanced version, and then whatever else comes out on this console, we'll be getting that too, just because we will. I'll get the standard since it's 70, but absolutely limited. Yeah. The one thing I hope they don't do, I hope it's not, when it comes out in PC, I hope it's not that awful Rockstar launcher. I hate that thing. I hate it. It's such a bad launcher. Steam is the only launcher I like to use. Good, thank you very much. But GTA 5 on PS3, PS4, PS5, and PC. And that's the mental thing about it. That game has been out for so many generations. And we used to get 3 GTAs a generation, which is madness. But we don't get it anymore now. Oh, thank you very much for the sub. Why
How are you still alive?
There we go. Where that pop up? Claire, what do you mean, how am I still alive? I know I'm old, but that's a bit harsh, Claire. My God. Thank you so much for the sub. I appreciate it. That is so generous. Thank you. Nobody is under any obligation to ever sub or spend money here as well. Just coming on and chatting and having a bit of crack. That's... And for those across the pond, when we say crack over in Ireland, it means for a bit of fun, a bit of banter, not heroin or cocaine. Which one is crack? Is crack heroin or cocaine? I don't know which one it is. Okay, I'll unsub then. Flemish, see if you don't, that's fine. That's more. See, as long as you come in and you look at my face and you say the words to me. That's all I really want. That's all I want. I like having my games central. Yeah. I hate that there's a launcher for everything. Yeah, I just want everything on Steam. Steam is the best launcher. You just make it all on Steam for me, please. It's cocaine. Right, okay. We use crack too. There we go. It's a very Irish thing. We would say to folks, what's a crack? What's a crack? How's it going? How's she cutting? What's a crack? I hear bears love cocaine. Wasn't that a film?
7 minutes. 7 minutes is all I can spare to play with you.
In my restless stream, I see that guy. Look at him coming on with the Silent Hill references. Tomahawk, you clever man. Also, best mustache on Twitch. Don't tell Mr. Popsicle I said that. In my job, most of the team in Birmingham are London based, so one guy says crack. They're utterly baffled and thought we were dealing. Yeah, and I bet they were disappointed then. They were all like, oh, so where's the cocaine? And you were like, no, I was just talking about a bit of crack. Called Cocaine Bear. I remember it vaguely, but I didn't watch it. I don't think it seemed like my sort of film. Although, Bennies are watching The Burrows and Netflix with Alfred Molina. That's great. I'm enjoying that.
Father!
Matt Berry. There he is. What's the story? This is a live pre-order or physical GTA. Oh, sure. There is no physical GTA. No, to be sorry, Jesus, that's what the games are there for. Now, as I was saying earlier on in the stream, the one for the camera, for the dog, the camera isn't working at all because I had to rebuild my PC because I had new parts for it. So the camera isn't working. So I will give her a treat. She will be given a treat. Just so we can see her. She will get a treat. And she's sitting looking at me as well. I'll see if she'll climb up on me a wee bit. Leo, where's the baby? You coming up? Where'd she go? There. Yeah, you can kind of see her. Leo, can you pop your head up a wee bit? You say hello? No? Sometimes I feel like you just use me for the treat. I'm not even getting coddles off you. I didn't remove it. It just doesn't. It's not working. I have to figure out why the camera's not. It's picking up the camera, but it won't actually display an image, which is annoying.
What? But you can't do this to me.
You know how much I sacrificed?
16 minutes, no game, Hook stream. See, these co-op streams are Hook. That's what the problem is. He's affected me now. He's affected me. That is Cleo, my woman. She is, out of all the people in the world, she's my favorite person. You right. Oh, we're halfway there. They're beating the boss as well. Ooh. So what happens as well is people in chat, when they check in, they go up a level. If they beat the boss at the end of the stream, everybody who has checked in goes up another level. I'm going to have to do something though. I'm deep in thought about doing something where you can go on like quests during the stream as well, and that could level you up. I tinker too much. That's my problem. Oh shit, he's here. Delete chat. Hook's always here. Also, fuck's sake, I don't as much. No, you're not too bad now. You do get into the games quite quick now. Hook timed himself out for 600 seconds. No. Oh, poor Hook. Actually, well, that. I was sitting thinking, is that going to unmod you? But no.
Sorry,
You're grand.
We're going streaking through the
I need to get my streaks back up. I blame my son for getting chicken pox that one time. Just so selfish. So selfish. Nah, the user called himself out. Right, okay. Nah, just a user called himself. What? Oh, I get it now, himself. Poor fella. What if this is the one time he's like, you know what? I was going to call into Leyoric a few times, and I haven't done. I felt a bit shy, a bit nervous. You know, I'm not the most social person. But you know what? Himself is going to build up all his courage, and I'm going to call him. I'm going to say hello to Leyoric stream. And then he realizes he's timed out. He's like, what have I done? And now he's sad, and you've done it. And you've done it, Hick. You made himself even more sad. And there's no point in unbanning him now because he's already gone away. He messaged me there now. He's in tears. He's in tears. He's in tears now, so he is. And we're getting the games because I could just sit and chat all night, couldn't I? I've just had my coffee as well, so I'm vibrating.
Leyoric, I'm sorry. I don't have the brains.
You always bring me the tears. Ready? Lamash, that's a really good point, because when Tears of the Kingdom came out, I was all, how do we know it's not Tears of the Kingdom? Because nobody mentions at any point the word tears or tears. It could be Tears of the Kingdom, like the kingdom has been torn. Ready? What is the story? You're enjoying Final Fantasy X as well. I'm liking it. I'm liking it. I'm seeing you enjoy it. Tears in space and time. Tears of the sphincter. To be fair, this game probably has about 12 of those. So I know we beat that sort of painting creepy boss last time, and we're in the labyrinth. I know this because Flemmish told me we're in the labyrinth. I thought I was still in the prison, but apparently I'm in a labyrinth. There we go. We're digging 10. It's so well told, and it's aged very well. Some say that about me. Not many people say it about me, but some people do. I have to get my buttons right. Right, what's run? Do you run? Ah. That's still in the prison. Why do you think you're still there? You clearly left it. There was at no point that I pulled on the noose and I fell down a hole, and then I started fighting a man. At what point did I leave a prison? This map drives me up the wall. This one. Look at it, it's lovely. I like the paper. It has a nice feel of a paper. It's a good grainy paper. It'd be good for drawing a wee picture of a bird or something, I think. So running through Angels, when we find Abstract Daddy, you thought it was still the prison. I thought that was like in my mind or something, but like physically I was still in the prison. Just emotionally I was elsewhere. I love the remake of this game. Flimosh says it's one of his favorite games, and to be fair, I can see why, because I'm really enjoying this game. It is the most moist and squelchy of games, but it's very, very good. Saw bits and pieces of it when it came out. Didn't really pay too much attention to it. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. It will non-nerve you and make you really, really uneasy. But it is good. Flimosh puts it in second right after 6. This is true. This is true. Flimosh loves Resident Evil 6. As evidenced by various emotes and... Oh?
Maria?
Your team did a brilliant job. Oh,
Maria!
it's so much fun
I
to
thought that
play.
thing killed you. Are you hurt?
Your life.
Not at all, silly.
But the thing... It stabbed you. There was blood everywhere.
Stabbed me? What do you mean?
It chased us to the elevator and then...
James. What are you talking about?
She's gaslighting me. She's gaslighting me.
Just before. Don't you
James and
remember?
Maria come out of DVD. This game is based on them characters in DVD.
Honey,
Same way, you know Leon from
Did something
DVD, he's his
happen to
own.
you?
He's a couple of his own games
after
that
we
they
got
made that
separated in
spin-offs of
that long
DVD.
hallway?
DVD.
Are you confusing me with someone else?
Worth a play. Yeah, Tomahawk was playing it as well, kind of
You were always so
alongside me.
forgetful.
Not
Remember that time
in a
the
physical
hotel?
sense. He wasn't right there in the room beside me. Although if he was, I could reach over and
You
kind of
said
twiddle
you
his
took
mustache, which would be
everything.
lovely.
You forgot that video.
So,
tape we made.
I'm too popular.
I wonder if it's still
About
there.
the hype train as well, folks. These are absolute legends. Thank you so much.
How
They
do
did a
you
great
know
job
about
expanding
that?
it, yet making it feel authentic to the original.
Aren't you Maria?
I can't wait to see what they do
I'm
with
not your
Soundcloud 1
Mary.
because it needs a proper remake. Yeah, Hook played that recently,
You
and
are
it is
Maria.
still a great game.
I
But
am.
you're right, yeah, if it had this treatment, it would be
If you
phenomenal,
want
wouldn't
me
it?
to be.
All I want from you is an answer.
Where's
Doesn't
Harvey?
matter who I am. I am here for you, James.
Not happy day. Wish to share hers.
See?
Wait for the remake, I agree, yeah. I liked 4. I liked Silent Hill the Room. I thought that was really creepy.
Don't you want to touch me?
Oh, don't. You're a married man, James. No. Tell her no. Granted, your wife's dead, but tell her no.
Well. If you happen to make up your mind,
Still a great game. It's long overdue. I mean, they did do a remake for the Wii, but it was poor. Well, that's because they asked him, do you want to do a remake of Silent Hill 1? But the guy was French, and he went, Wii! So they made it for the Nintendo Wii. Konami.
I'll find some way to...
Konami are very, very silly sausages when it comes to a lot of games.
I'll come
Like
back.
the way they mishandled the Metal Gear Solid franchise as well was a bit annoying because I love those games. Oh, it's good to see James as a handle in the situation. Can we go back on? Oh, we can. I thought it was going to log us out. She's just going to sing me songs, right? Okay. We're still in a prison. This is prison-y. This is very prison-y looking. I'm sorry. If I came in the room like this, I would at first think prison. No more passive scares. Well, we'll see. Tomahawk about that. We'll see. Life as a prison. That's true, really. Oh, shit. What's this? We fucker going to be around the corner jumping out at me. Yeah, what are you? BRB, not a problem. Don't know about change it. Don't know about change, but it was terrible. Okay. I haven't played it, so I don't know. Oh, James, we're a random box. Oh, shit. Right, okay. Oh, right, okay. Ooh. Okay. Am I supposed to find a door? Oh, right. So there's various rotationals. I think I just have to go this way, don't I? Am I the go in here? How long did the labyrinth take you? So that's a bit fucked up. Can't go up there. I'm just kind of stuck here, right? Okay. Did you see the Goblin King and his tremendous crotch? Flemish, I told you to stay away from the funny candies that's in the drawer. What are you talking about? That, thank you for punning that. David Bowie, Labyrinth. Right, okay. I think I just did the exact same thing. I'm not really thinking this through. No. Do I have to do it so it opens passageway, but that before did nothing. Oh, that might be it. Ah, there we go. He's talking about the... Yeah, he's a big massive crotch and keeps drawing your attention to it. I haven't seen that film in absolute years. I remember being creeped out about it as a kid. Jesus Christ, McKinn's. I remember being creeped out about it as a kid. By it as a kid, though. That kind of freaked me out a wee bit. Much like this long, empty, daft corridor. Brilliant film, one of my dad's favourites. Probably longer than I should. I keep forgetting box orientation. It's a class. He's wearing the box on under his tights. It makes it look bigger. What's going on here? Oh, bugs. 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 Oh, what the fuck is that? What the fuck was that? Can I tell you a fact about the mandarins? What, like the oranges? Like, orange, you glad I gave you these fruits? The enemy? What enemy?
This is the worst.
Are you doing spoilers again, Flemish? You being spoilery again? What are you talking about? Ooh. Chris is just hanging out. Look at him. You wild man. How's the volume and everything as well? Because I readjusted my microphone volume because I was looking over a VOD and I don't know whether it was because that one of the nights previously I was tired and kind of low energy. Volume sounds good. Oh, thank... Oh, Jesus. Fuck. Flemish said the volume sounds good. Fuck. What do we do? Look, we haven't planned for this eventuality. What do we do? Sean, well, come on. What's happening? What you've done... What you've done with the alerts could have done with some work? Why, what's wrong with my alerts? How dare you, sir? Dare you? Looks like the world has ended. It is. Yes. I do appreciate you letting me know if the audio's okay as well, though. I know I give grief. I enjoy the grief. No items. I disagree. I have many items. I could fucking shoot that shit. Next time we'll redeem a jump scared. But Sean, how are you getting on? Can I say something without it being offensive? It takes a lot to offend me. Go ahead. You have, like, that is not offensive at all. That is a compliment upon compliments. I appreciate that. Normally I just get you look like a cheap Stone Cold Steve Austin, so I appreciate that. Thanking you. Now here are my favorite. Yes, there is a list of favorite people. And it involves everybody in this chat. Why is the floor all graded? Ben Stars a shite. What? McKinn's. What shenanigans are you chatting there? Hold on, I have to read Mackenzie's message to see what it said. Mackenzie, I can't see your message. It disappeared. Oh no, it went away. What happened? What happened? We have a counter as well in my stream. Every time I mention Ben Star, someone does exclamation mark Ben plus, and welcome back, man. Welcome back indeed. And then we have a we picture the man himself appearing on the side. Let's see.
Hi,
There we
I'm
go.
Ben Starr,
Look at him.
and if
He's
you're
a
anything
glorious
like me,
man.
then you absolutely love me.
We do love you, Ben Star. Imagine. Oh, that's right. This shit's happening. I don't know what it is. Can't fucking see anything. What are you?
How are you still alive?
Cody, thank you very much for the sub, Mayhem. That's so nice. I appreciate it. Oh, I'm not going near that thing. Not going near it. That's a mandarin. That looks nothing like a delicious fruit. It didn't take much to offend you. You're not offending me. You're offending all of Ben Star. We don't offend that man. He is an absolute national treasure and a god amongst humans. And his favorite game is Final Fantasy VIII. Let's see. You haven't licked it yet? How would you know how it tastes? Do you know what, Flemish? You know what? That's a fair point. You're right. I haven't actually licked one of them enemies yet, so I have no idea how it tastes. Touche. Touche. Oh, what the hell's that? Oh, I'm getting stabbed. Run! James, there's nothing here. Why did you run down this corner? James, you fool! The emote, the Ichigo one? Yeah, I do. I'm a big fan. Actually, if you do exclamation mark tattoos, it should bring up a slide reel of my tattoos, and one of them is bleach. Oh, hello there. See, you can fight. I don't mind you. There we go, there's Ichigo one. I'm a big fan of tattoos. Oh, I'm hiding my Tomberry one, you can't even see him, because of my big stupid face. I must change where that positions itself. Oh, right, so I've got to pull that over and climb up on something. Oh! You son of a gun. I don't like the fact that these ones don't show up, you know, on your radio until they move. I don't like that. Also, why did both my bot and me give that link? Make vice a snake dick. Oh. Huzzah! I'm back now. Are you still alive? Huzzah! James! Hit this! Fuck it on, James! Fuck it on! Hit this. Break the... He's not... I'm going to have to waste a bullet to get bolts. James, you absolute silly sausage, you. James, you're the reason why we can't have nice things. I'm not even joking now. Why would you do this? Why would you want this, James? Where is this wanting me to put this? Wants me to climb up? Or does this need moved? Is this where I was earlier? Maybe. Maybe. Ah, there's a fucking thing up there. Right, okay. Leo, you've hurt my feelings a wee bit. You came in, you seemed like you wanted cuddles, and then when I gave you a treat, you cleared off and left me. No. Don't be sitting your face on my lap looking at me with them big brown eyes. I know what your game is. I know. Well, okay, I'll give you a pet. No more treats, though. Okay? The redeem doesn't work anymore. The camera... Okay, the camera broke. It broke. I don't know what happened to it. I don't know. I am not a camera fixer man.
Sorry, we're going streaky.
75 stream streak as well.
Backlash.
Come on,
Backlash. At Backlash.
At Backlash. Right, Cleo, put a bed there now. Go.
At Backlash. Backlash.
Happy Irish, so welcome on.
At Backlash. At Backlash.
Remember, there's no at Backlash. Anyone watching wrestling on Netflix? I'm not up to date on it. Ooh, the fridge is moving. Is this the Neil's fridge? Am I inside it? I feel like McFo. He did. I feel like they all kind of did. Check it out. See, this is what happens when you don't clear out your fridge. This is what happens. I would try and tune into a lot of the pay-per-views and stuff, but I don't watch it weekly anymore. I just don't have the time for like 2-3 hour shows. And then you have AEW as well at the same time. Why would you reach in there, James? Oh, we've got lighter fluid. And bullets. Yeah. All that's needed for a hearty meal. And a drawn-on door? It's not a real door. I love how it barely bats an eyelid to anything in this place, my kind of guy. Well, I'm freaked the fuck out, so... Does that count? So did I just come in here for a stinky fridge with lighter fluid on it? If so, I am disturbed. Also, where the fuck am I now? I don't know. There's an item over here. I'm going to do this just in case it locks me into some sort of cutscene or something. How is the visual of the game as well? I know it's very dark, but I think that's just more the game than anything. I'd probably try and turn the brightness up if needs be. Where am I now? James, we're running. We're running. We're running, James. What the fuck is that noise? Is that Mr. X? Right, suspended cage. Right, I've already gone through that area, right, okay. My top 3 wrestlers are Carl Sane, Io Sky, and Asuka. Ooh. Very nice. Do you enjoy the wrestling? I like the... No, I can't do anything like that. But okay. I like the drama of it. I like watching it. It would be like my soaps. Ignitus! Welcome on. Evening, sir, indeed. Right, okay. Is there another door I can go through? Right, whatever this one is. Right, we're gonna shave. We're gonna shave right before it. I've never seen any wrestling ever. Really, it's good to watch. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. I love it. Have since left. Insane Talents, those 3. Yeah, definitely.
I swear you would be of more use to me if I skinned you and turned your skin into a lampshade.
Well.
Or fashioned you into a piece of high-end luggage. I can even add you to my collection.
Tell me how you feel, Tom Hawk.
Are you saying that you have a collection of skin luggage?
Of course I'm not, Dee. Don't be ridiculous. Think of the smell. You haven't thought of the smell, you bitch!
I'm sorry I missed you in Hook Stream. Ignitus, never apologies. Even just call in saying hello at any time is much appreciated. Jeepers. It's another one of these frickin' rooms. I am going to get out of your way a wee bit to figure out where I'm going. Right, so there's a big room in front of me. That's all I know. That's all I know. Man, you seem to be loving that Ichigo one. And it is, to be fair, one of my favourites. Nope, too late. They already hit you. No way. I know a bunch got added onto Netflix, so I've been tempted. It has been nice having it on Netflix. Beforehand, we had WWE Network, but the UK was always really behind when it came to live shows, so it was annoying. And it was thanks because of the agreement they had with Sky. But it's a lot better now. It's on Netflix. But we're running. I'm just picking a direction and going with it. What's in here? More bad guys, which I suppose is good. Is more get bad guys good? Wait, did this just take me around in a circle? You son of a bitch. Right, okay. At least we're getting more of the map. It's okay, I screw them nerds. I'm not a nerd. I like the sports ball. Go team. Did you watch the game the other day? The sports ball? The team that won did well. We'll take a wee drink of juice while we're running here. Happy wake up juice. Right, I don't know, nothing there. There's a wee box. Right, what's this? Right, it's a light at the end of the tunnel. But I can't go that way. This is very, very stressful. Over here. Right, okay, this feels like something. There's blood on the wall. Which is fine. Creepy house. Creepy house. Health drink. We have rain clouds forming. We're in for an epic storm, hopefully. We had some crazy lightning here last week. My house was fine. Where I live outside of Derry, so my house was fine. Ooh, what's in there? What's this? But up where Hook and all lives, they got to see like sheet lightning and stuff. No, and oh, you dirty sausage. I don't know what a dirty sausage is compared to a clean one, like. Paja! Thunderstorms are so cool. Yeah, I was a bit jealous, but at the same time, I have a doggo, and she would have been terrified. She would not have been a fan of them. So I'm kind of a little bit glad, because we've had it before where we've had thunderstorms, and it just ends up me sitting cuddling a dog the whole night. I think I can think of a few things for a dirty sausage. A filthy bap. I hope it rains well here. I love thunderstorms. My doggo doesn't like the storms either. No, Cleo, she's a border collie, and she's not a small dog, but she's very, very fearful of everything. Book has met her in real life as well, and she just sits looking at you terrified. What is a crack here? Why? What happened here? Oh, it's another hole in the wall. I don't like holes in the wall. Best thing is, Leyoric, we're neighbours. You're not far from me. Cody, am I not far from you? Are you my next door neighbour? Do you keep kicking them footballs into my yard? If so, I'm keeping them. I'm not sending them back. This opens the door. Right, okay, I have to stick my hand in the hole. She heard my name and now she's over sniffing my knee. I wouldn't sniff my knee. You don't know where it's been. Although I've started doing some exercise, which is good. I'm not doing much. I've started just doing lunges. It's not the best of exercises, but, you know, it's a big step forward. Not that close. Just over to me. We know now. We'll have a barbecue tomorrow. Rod! What's happening? Look at all the emotes. Are they power? I saw a Power Ranger emote. Amazing. What's this? Lighter Wick. Like John Wick? Must be John Wick's less famous brother. Lighter. Eberlat. Want to spar with me for training? I may look a bit intimidating with the bald head and the tattoos, but I've never been in a fight, and I don't think I would know how to. Right, so we're going on down and then to the right. Right, okay. Let's go. I'm just doing that because you said thunderstorms. Ah, very good. Na. You may both. Oh, steam train. Well, you alright? I'm tired. You okay? Is it the heat? Is the heat keeping you up? I'm in a little town called Scunthorpe. Never been. Never had the pleasure. Oh, more of the shenanigans on this road. Did you see setup in the multi-discord? I did not. I must have a wee look. Yeah, that heating on the work yesterday. Oh my god. Have a word with them. Heating on. In this climate. In this economy. Can I shoot them? Oh, I can. I don't think I did anything. I'm probably best just not wasting the ammo on them. I'm around the corner. You can't get me. Run! Run, man, run! Oh, hello. My in-laws did yesterday too. Madness! Absolute madness. I have the heating that comes on for an hour in the morning, but it just heats our hot water. So we've hot water and taps for dishes and stuff. Is this a PC setup? I love a PC setup. I got a new case, processor, and motherboard. Got them all installed yesterday. Thought I broke everything. And I've only broke one camera, I think. Actually, I don't even know if it is broke. I'm assuming it's broke. Potentially broke, right. So I'm assuming this is the way I have to go and the other way is the way out. We're just going to take another wee drink. A wee drinky poo. Oh. That's a squelchy noise. Oh, one of these. One of these. James! Attack! Oh, there's still something else. Right, okay. Oh, she's still alive. I thought I got... Did you? Huzzah! My entertainment setup. Oh, so TV and consoles and stuff. Where'd you purchase it? Amazon. Hello, my camera can do 1080 and it's Logitech. Very nice. Very nice. Oh, look at this for a setup. Here we go. Go play some Doom now. Is that for that room that was unlocked previously? Or locked previously? Right, okay. I keep when the action hits, I keep turning my light off. That's the desk in James's office. He looks like he's plenty of work built up on it. It looks like he's, he hasn't been pulling the finger out, so to speak. James, what's the story? Oh, no, he's right. Run! James, run! Flashbang! Ow! I forgot which way I was going. I think it's this way. Yeah, I've got lost. Yeah, I got lost. You know what? I can just go through here again. Fuck it. Fuck it. You could also play Altered Beast. What a game. Altered Beast was good. I like that. I think the drink is needed tonight. I've just stuck with my coffee. I didn't partake in an alcoholic beverage tonight, unfortunately. Just describe what I got. The wall of text, though. Ah, fair play. It's worth a wee read. Worth a wee read, Rod. Happy days. This is the way. This is the way. It's the way. Ah, so this is the door I couldn't get in previously. And... Right, we're going to take a poop. Nobody look. Nobody look. Ooh. Ew. Ew. How do I take that down there? There's a howl over here. There's a howl over here. And it's a whole area. Right, okay. I don't drink much. Never been interested in drunk. See, at my age now, I would rather have something that might be a bit more expensive, but it's nice to drink, rather than getting drunk. You know what I mean? Right, so we need to cool that down somehow. It's probably going to be whatever's through here then. Where is this going? This is just going off in a direction, isn't it? More missing floor. Right, so it's a valve. I'm not in a cool kind of orange box kind of way. Well, we turned on the water. And we're... Oh, we fucking wrecked the toilet. Thanks, I'm down in the library using headphones to watch on the computer and trip. I forgot my Twitch password. Ah, okay. Ah, broken loiter. So can we combine this with the wick and the fuel light, the thing, and drop the person? Got it. Like a good drink. I'd have to agree with it. Oh, I seen it and it still annoyed me. It sounds like there's someone right at that window. It's so creepy. My password 123 or password exclamation mark. That's what all cool kids. That's all cool kids do. Right. So if I go into my menu, I should be able to combine this and this and this to make a lighter. Good vanilla vodka and Coke. I don't like vodka, and I think it was when I was younger I made myself sick with it. And since then, I can't really deal with the taste, but I like a good whiskey or rum or even just a nice beer or tequila. Tequila. And I don't mean like shots of tequila, I mean like proper sipping tequila. Maker's Mark and Coke for the night. Ooh, very nice. Fancy. I know, McKenzie, I apologize. I apologize profusely, but I was looking at chat and it popped up. It still freaked me out. Because it sounds like that window there's nothing right beside me. This seems fine. Out of my head, you didn't drink. Blamash doesn't drink very often. But I have seen him drink before. The man is an absolute plethora of entertainment. He doesn't need to. He doesn't need to. That man lives on hot sauce and pineapple. Not had spirits in a long time, but it does sound good. That's the thing now. Like, I think when people are... Oh, James is glitched. When people are young, they kind of drink just to get drunk rather than, you know, just enjoying the flavours of it or what's going on with it. But like a nice wine. I enjoy a nice wine, not a wee bit of red. But jump in another hole because that's normal. I would actually love to go out for some food rather than alcohol, to be fair. See if someone was looking for me to go and do something on a night out, I would love to go out for a meal rather than drinking. He has his reasons for jumping down holes. See, it still seems prisony. Oh, we're back here. Okay. Oh, a lot of it's damaged now. Right, okay. Right, so can we go in now then? There's more...
perfect.
It was perfect.
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 Everything, down to the last minute details.
So do we get more of an area to explore now? That's just steps. I thought it was something. I stopped going out. Too much violence in pubs and clubs. That's another thing as well. I don't like that. Why can't people just go out and enjoy themselves and not drink to excess? I don't know. I think it's maybe it's because I'm a bit older as well. I just don't like to go out and I'd be fearful because I've seen it on occasion where people can get seriously hurt, and it's not good. enjoyed clubbing. I enjoy dancing. Hook will back me up on this one. I am a big dancer when I drink. I think it's the exact same way I had it before. Does it matter? Does the head matter? Well, that's that question, Flim Flam. I guess that's what leads to jumping on a bus at Fuckwhistle in Belfast and going to a house party in Donegal. Is that what happened to you? My God. I can confirm, yes. I've often been described as being nicer when I drink because all I want to do is dance. Not that I'm not trying not to be nice normally, but I do dance quite a bit when I drink. Right, so this was not the one. I enjoyed going to raves when I was in my 20s. Now, I don't want to leave my house. The loud music, I think, would put me off a little bit. I will often agree to a night out, and then when it comes around, make an excuse as to why I can't go. Well, no, I don't want it. But yeah, I'm a dancey boy. I'm a dancey boy. I think this looks a little bit different. Ah! Figured it out. Figured it out by sheer accident. There's actually a video of me, Happy Irish, and Annihilator on a dance floor at a wedding, partying it up. Like absolute legends. Right, okay. Those are 3 doors again. Right, so I'm assuming I have to do this 3 times. And they're different every time, depending. Well, this is fun. Oh, these guys again. Ah. Exactly. I knew a friend who was a doorman. I'd say doorman now. Being called bouncers. Point is, in a club called Garbos. I went with mates, knocked the door, got greeted with fucking hell. You took your time. I don't know, I'm just not, I was never very good at it all. You know, the whole like partying and there's times I'll be out on a night out and I'd get to a certain point where I'll just stop drinking and be all like, I just want to go home and get something to eat. I want to just go get a kebab or get a Chinese and go home. Look at that. You're not getting your security deposit back, mate. I think we should do that. We should arrange nights out where we don't actually go drinking and we just go get all the takeout food. And we just go takeout place to takeout place and try different foods. And that will be our night out. That will be our clubbing. There's going to be someone up here, isn't there? Oh, what? No, you're the other side. Oh, you got me good, you son of a bitch. Is there still another one? Fair play, D. Yeah, you done got me good. Right, so I'm assuming that they moved this bookshelf. See, this fell over, but whoever did it, they only had their shelf to blame. Leaving that there was a very selfish decision. In this room. The hole. We're not going down the hole yet. We will hold off on the hole until we get over here. Oh, this is just opening the other side, isn't it? To bring up the map, it's... Yeah, it brings us around the circle. Brings us round in a circle. Okay, down the hole we go. What the kids say. Skibbity toilet. Liz no cap. 6 followed by a 7. Don't know where that's coming from. Is the... Oh, gee. Have you tried being dead, sir? The atmosphere in this game, the noise, the audio, the lighting, so good. It does a wonderful job of both making you feel a little bit powerful and then just taking it all away from you. to hold there with a key. Have you met our Lord and Savior? You're about. I was very close to it. I was very close to it. You know me so well. Apologies for anybody stuck in Dawn ads. It's Twitch's fault, not mine. They made me do it. Wait. Let's just look around. Oh, that's cool. I don't like that. This is where I was before. Well, this is where I seen before, wasn't it? It was. This is where I seen before. Can I just open this? No. It opens. So that I was on the other side there. Right, okay. Oh, you sneaky little bastard. They do this. They lure you into a room as well. You run after the thing and then they just pajamas and jump out at you. Oh. Saw ya. I saw ya. Oh, fuck. Yes, cozy nights. That's my sign. Yes, all of the food and the snacks. This is not a cozy night. It's a cozy nightmare. Nope, I didn't mean to. Stop it. Stop it. You're hurting me. You're hurting me. You're hurting me. Ah! Batman! That'll teach him from trying to kill me again. That's the last time he does that. Oh, thank God. Oh, fuck! Where are you? These guys were less aggressive last time. What has gotten into them? Which way am I going? I can hear ya. See ya. Discombobulated. Right, which way did I go? It was this way I was going, wasn't it? Right, I went in there, I killed those guys, I was going around this corner. I'm gonna pick that up. I'm just gonna try and jump on me. I can hear ya. Come on, wherever you are. Right, let's see if there's anything else I'm missing here. Or have I completely mapped out the area now? I think I mapped it all out now. It's just a... Right, okay. Handcuffed gate. Your handcuffed gate? Oh, right, okay, don't like this. Don't like this one bit, but it's not going this way. Right, okay, we're going this way, and there's lots of noises. I can already see you. Where'd you go? Sneaky little bastard. Look, oh, it's so creepy. So creepy. Look, I can see it. Stop making sex noises. We're running low on handgun ammo here. Does it tell me I should be swapping over to a new weapon? Melee more often then. You melee more often? How dare you, sir? Oh, well, that's a fun-looking wall. There's a door. Another door. This probably opens up a wee shortcut. I finished this game ready for war with my damn well I have. You do a lot of slobbering, sir. A lot of slobbering. And so this takes me to the previous area. Right, okay. There is key. Small key. Small. No. Right, okay. Is this the small key that opens up the chained thing? If I'm slobbering, that means I like it. Aww. He really likes me. Damn you, Spider-Man. Give me pictures of Spider-Man. But I'm indifferent to you. Is that why you abuse me? Right about doesn't know Sierra's Flamash's wife. She doesn't mean physically. She means mentally. Pin has been replaced. Hook is on the ball tonight. Look. Look at that. No, that's just for fun. I have no idea who he is. How often do you have to say that? Do you just deny responsibility sometimes? Can you blame her? Not at all. Jesus. Leggy cunt! Take that, Legolas. Usually I say whenever he says something really terrible. So 99% of the time. Yeah, I can get that. I can get that. I'm playing Star Fox and it's fantastic with this audio behind it. I would say it probably ruins the experience somewhat. Let me melee you! I uploaded a TikTok as well the other day about how fucking awful the audio is in this game. Not awful in a bad way, but how squelchy and moist it is. Is the most of the moist. Where? What? There. Okay. Just scoping out this room. What's this? Angle bolts? No, rifle rounds. God damn you, rifle rounds. Okie dokie. Artichoke. Let's go. Right, so I'm assuming that's beside where that... Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly where that is. And there we go the other way. They're back now. Was fighting a mean-looking guy in Pokemon Go. I won, though. I can take his black suit and cry about it. Rod, you shoot him. You shoot him. How dare he, sir? How dare he try and steal your Pokemons? Oh, right, okay. Well, looks like I'm not going back that way. So what was the point of putting the shortcut then? Okay. That's cool. Doesn't like that wee autosave coming up. This is beyond all. Oh, go this way. It's fine. You're right at the end, but look at this. Look at this here. Someone's going to jump out. I mean, this is the one. They're just going. It's a fuckle floor. Oh, I'm being called. Shit! Run, James, run! I wonder if I can climb ladders. Fuck. Right, okay.
Have
I
you
didn't even
heard
get
of the
to explore
critically
down there.
acclaimed
Teddy, what's happening?
RPG Final Fantasy XIV? With an expanded free trial, you
Pyramid's
can
head
play through
name's
the
actually
entirety of
Toblerone.
Realm Reborn and the award-winning Heaven's Ward.
Yes.
Stormblood and Shadowbringers expansions up to level 80
Very
for
good,
free
Teddy,
with
very good.
no restrictions on playtime.
Thank you for checking on, Tedster. How you getting on, brother? And about not found Teddy, please do so. Man is bald and beautiful, and he's an absolute legend as well. Playing a lot of Final Fantasy XIV. Also does a whole world ahead of us. 19. Ooh. No, that's right, no Jake. Broke his shoulder trying to break a piece of Toblerone off yesterday. My god. It is made of mountain. It is made of real mountain. Good spot arena, the patio doors open. It's lovely, lovely and cool. Ooh, it has cooled down quite a bit, which is nice. Right, I am going to take a quick break. I run to the bathroom. I will be back in momentarily. So, what we're going to do for anybody who hasn't been here before, and on my Be Right Back screen, you'll be presented with 2 games. It's exclamation mark vote 1 for the first game, exclamation mark vote 2 for the second game, and at the very end, we crown a champion of games. So, I will be back in a wee second. Oh, Hook. Hook. It went to the 50-50 and it lost. No way, buddy. Oh, no way. Oh, hold on. My chat. Cleo, seriously, darling? No. Let's see. I'm just catching up with chat here. What I miss. What I miss. The Devils by Joe McCrombie. You started it, having a good laugh. What's this? Oh, what you're reading? Right, okay, Teddy. Dark fantasy. So, I just caught the tail end of that as well. Oh my god, Hook. Oh my god, you must be raging. Let's see. Is this Majestic I played? No, it's AI generated. It's AI generated. It started off as a silly song for whenever I did my voting system, and it's kind of evolved from kind of then to become a theme song with the stream, which is it's just silly. It's just silly. Silly sausageness. Let's see. We're caught up. Sorry, Hook. I did what I was told. Sierra, don't let him oppress you like that. Don't let him oppress you. And it wasn't even the best of all the Metal Gear Solids. Disgusting. I blame Funlash, so Hook's just ban him now at this point. I will do myself, I promise. Revenge for all the time you actively voted against me. Tried to change the song once and there was an uproar. There was a kickoff. I tried to change it to a different song and chat erupted. But thank you for sticking with me, folks. I have expelled the liquid and now got in new liquid. Liquid. Metal Gear. When I call balls. It's normally me votes against you. I actually tried twice, and the second time we boycotted voting. No, you boycotted voting. Everyone else kept going. You're all, I'm boycotting the vote. Get that liquid king. Me as we. Look at that crap. I love a good graph. Right. I'm not happy. There's a fucking. Oh, where did I come on from? Why am I lost? Oh, Jesus. Accountants! Oh my god, I felt too hard at that one. Chrissy Tina, welcome on. What is happening? What did I get in here? Was it a key or something? Oh, check this. It's been a while. Equipment? No. Medical memo? No. Hey, what's happening? What did I even get on here? Was it just them medical supplies? It's fun. Set up on my computer again. Oh, I know. It's been so warm recently, hasn't it? Right, so I have to deal with himself down here. Right, if I pull up a map of what should be in that right below me. Rotating cube. Before time began was the cube. Nope, it doesn't bring up that area. Oh no, it does. So it's down here at the bottom, right? I just gotta keep running. Storm it. Is it a storm or is it Virgil from Devil May Cry? I am the storm that is approaching, provoking black clouds in isolation. What's in here? There's nothing on here. What am I doing? He didn't come on here. Why? What's going on in here? There's nothing on the table. Nothing on the floor. He doesn't. Oh, here we go. Speaking of soundtracks, Devil May Cry 5. What a soundtrack that game had. So good. You alright? Ah, you're right there, dickhead. What you gonna do? Oh, he's gonna stab through, isn't he? Fuck. Right, okay. Up the ladder. I think we're all misjudging Mr. Pyramid Head here. I think he's actually the good guy. He's here to help us. By stabbing us with a giant sword. Because that's how you help people. Right, I hear a squelchy baby noise. Squelchy baby! Well, that's fun. Hello there. another one there as well. Oh, you're on the floor. Get up off the floor. Oh, and oh, you as well. Ah! I was the storm that was approaching and they weren't ready for me. And I really am. See, I tried to go more melee and then I just ended up getting stuck in the middle of them all. Ah, so this is where I was earlier. Right, okay. I probably don't want to do... Oh, well, what is this? The wire cutter? Right, okay. I want to explore the other side there as well, just to see what that was. Just so I know. Just so I know. Guess there's supplies. Something nice. Maybe the bit of cake. Yeah, see, there was nice stuff. Here we go. Bullets. Bullets are nice. You know, they are 0 calorie. So unlike cake, which is filled with calories and will make me a chubby puppy. I don't know what I'm using the wire cutters for. It's a fun noise. Right, so hold on. Where does this take me? Where do I have to get to cut wire? Because I can hear one of them sorty bastards. I've already been down all here though, I have. Right. Where am I going? It's cutting wires? Why am I getting wire cutters for? Am I back in RPD? Am I doing the Leon A campaign? Go back and do a wee quick shave. Labyrinth. Labyrinth. So we've done that whole section. Is it on down the corridor we haven't explored? Bet you that's where all that dragon is coming from. Ah. Some stuff. Some stuff. Them drawers do not open. I'm kind of looking as well, just keeping on top of my stuff for my PC. I used to set up at 10% CPU usage and now it's down to like 4. I'm just powering through for the week. You have aircon upstairs though, don't you? It's not as awful. Right, I've already been there. But where am I taking these wire cutters to? What is locked? The heat this year was out doing the aircon. But at least you have the aircon as an option. Wires, where are you? So that's where I have to go. So I have to go to number 4, which is way over on the other side. Why am I even here then? Didn't need to go this way. Yeah, even my aircon. I don't. Most houses in Northern Ireland don't have aircon. Because very, very rarely are we in a position where the actual heat is that bad. So if I go through there, and up and then round. No, I can't go that way. Where am I going to? Oh, was it going the right way? I might have been. Might have been going the right way. Here's a good I would agree with you. It's getting hotter now. It is? Oh yeah, it is. It is. I'm not saying that it's not needed. It's more, it's not common because of the way the heating system is over here. Can you not look at your map when you're up here? Right, so this will take me down to 4. And then I have to go the whole way around. I have to go down. So this is here. If I go to 1, 1 takes me there, and then down to 3. No, that doesn't make any sense. I think I've confuzzled myself, I've got lost. It is a labyrinth. Those out wearing window curtains cross does the job. Can I just go straight on here? Go down and round. Maybe. Oh, there's a hole. Oh, I've already been there. Quite a bit. Oh, hello. That map, such a headache. What do you not like about it? Is it just the confusion of the map? You're poking your hose out windows and neighbours might see. Or that's maybe that's what it is. Maybe we all have to go over so we can all watch him do it. I think in my haste to get away from him, I then got myself lost. Where the fuck am I now? Right back here again. Fuck. Yeah, the confusion. Need a dummy-proof map. So I like the Resident Evil map. I like the color coordinated. You have not finished this room. Please go back and there's items. I enjoy that map. BRB, Cody, not a problem. You take your time. But this is where we've got to. Well, I just go back the ways because I think that's where I have to go anyway. Now this is taking me over here, and I think that is what takes me down. What takes me down? Love the map on this one because it marks that doors are locked and able to be opened, and keys in rooms. Yeah, it is very intuitive. It's me just being a silly sausage and getting myself lost. Part of me thinks I was never really supposed to come up here. Because if I go round the ways... I'm here now. If I go round the ways and up I get to the wires. What is all that noise? Sammy! What's happening, buddy? Hello? Oh, fucking bring it. Like, ladders here and the numbers on both floors, so you know. Yeah, that is true, but it's still very confusing. Fucking hell. You knew I was coming up this way, that's why. You fucking knew it. That's why you have everybody and their grannies sitting hiding here. Right, so here's one I'm supposed to use the wire cutters for to get through. Then I'd squeeze through the gap. I'm hoping none of them boys can come with me. Oh, is there any items here just before I go down here? No. Let's go. Name of game Silent Hill 2. First thing you say is, why is there so much noise? I know that there's nothing silent about this game at all. Anybody's not following Sammy, please do so. Absolute legendary, man. Plays a lot of JRPGs. Wonderful, wonderful community. Velvet sneaks on. Sneaky sausage. What is happening? Finished 007 yet? Are you playing that, Sammy? Are you streaming it or are you just playing it? Oh, we're going to jump down another hole. Why would you want this? Why would you want to jump down this hole, James? James, why? I know it's me pressing the button and also questioning him as to why he's doing this. Yeah. Nope, but the PS5 says I'm 50% of the way through the game. 007's a great game. It's a phenomenal. If you're a fan of James Bond as well, it's an exceptionally good Bond game. Right, where am I? Oh, it's brought me back here. Right, okay. Back here. You finished it for the second time the other day. Right, we have more of the thing fucked. I don't know if this is where I'm supposed to go. Maybe this? We'll go and have a look. We'll go and have a look. We'll have a look-see and see what's happening. See what the story is inside. Right, was that a dead thing? Oh no, it's bricks. Oh, I was bricking it there for a moment. No, this is not the way it's supposed to go. I will say it's the best that we've ever had. You know what? That you wouldn't be wrong in saying that. Can't think of a better one. I know a lot of people go to GoldenEye, but putting the two up side by side, I would think as a James Bond game, First Light is more of a James Bond game. This game is mad. This game is mental. It's an insane game. Never been able to do anything with the ones downstairs. So I'm thinking whatever this is. Right, okay. Oh, what are you? Oh, a picture. Your best buddy. 3. Right, okay. Okay. Any luck in catching them killers? GoldenEye was great FPS for the N64. That has a James Bond skin. Wasn't that originally supposed to be like a Perfect Dark game? Was Perfect Dark supposed to be a GoldenEye game? I don't know. I can't remember. I do love it when a game was originally meant to be something else. They're always a lot of fun. Can I not just jump across there? Do whatever that is. Right, so that is a kind of a triangle with a cross upside down. Right, okay. Maybe that's my clue. One killer, actually. Star Fox Adventures was a great game called Dinosaur Planet. Is that true? I know Devil May Cry was... Oh, so that's the same symbol. I know Devil May Cry was originally Resident Evil 4. It was a prototype for Resident Evil 4. And they didn't go with it for that game, but they did go ahead and finish the Devil May Cry game then. Most average game ever. What is? It's true, having a Star... what are we talking about? This is true, and having Star Fox, couldn't help it. Devil May Cry is meant to be R4. Yeah, Tomahawk, you're simpatico, you're thinking the same as me. Yeah, Rare was making a game and Fox like characters, and Shigeru Miyamoto said, slap a Fox McCloud on that bitch. Launch Simulator 2025. That's just RE6, isn't it? Resident Evil. Right, so is it the store this time? Didn't even save. Well, normally there's a wee save when you go on. Oh. Jesus! Fuck. I don't like that. I don't like that. Fuck! I said the other night I love Star Fox and everyone has a name like Pepe, Falco, Slip, and Pikmin, and then you guys get Fox McCloud's dad, and he's called James. James. Are these all dead because Pyramid Head got them? I don't know what to think about Pyramid Head. Is the guy helping me? I don't know. Yes, sir, streaming it. Turns out I was getting nauseous bad because I had motion blur turned on. Sierra was getting that with, why did I do that for? Sierra was getting that with Resident Evil 6 the other night as well. I think it's just because of the bad cameras in that game, though. I don't think it was good. Oh, this is the apartment from earlier. I hid in that cupboard. And I watched Pyramid Head out here doing stuff. Doing stuff. Yeah, it was pretty bad. RE5 and RE6%. Yeah, pretty much. It's not motion blur, but the cameras for her. Yeah, that's what I was saying, yeah. I get QR sick. I get motion sick at QR. You know, how long do you stream when I'm sleeping or something? I never see it. I feel like you're doing it on purpose just to spite me. It is. It's a ridiculous stream. That's what it's called. You're my friend who usually plays horror games, playing Star Fox. I told him that Star Fox is a horror game because you get stuck in a horrifying realization that you're stuck with Slippy. And even if he dies in the missions, he eventually comes back. He's like Mr. X. I get narcolepsy, so I'm not for driving. I don't know what that is. How many words do you continue stream while I sleep? I know, Sammy. Sammy, what's this all about? You know, I was too spooked, and I forget about this apartment being in the beginning. You just shit yourself the whole way through it. Sammy does stream often later times for us, or really early, stupid time zones. Damn you, time zones! He's persistent, like, jeez. I don't like the fact that I had to bust a hole here. It means that I'm going to be running around circles, I think. Oh, I knew you would get up. Ah, kick him. James Bond style. Okie dokie, artichoke. I sprinted through the labyrinth because I was 1 HP. Oh, no way. Well, we are going to reload some of our weapons now. I've tried to not use the rifle or shotgun as much as possible. So you get sleepy. You get... Oh, narcolepsy. Right, okay. You can sleep in the car. You know. Yes, I started confusing his life, but it's like pattern to our benefit. This is true. This is true. If you're working all doesn't matter now. We have to watch you. We have to watch your faces. You play games. That would be an ecumenical matter. They just run through here. It's been a while. It's been a while. This is. Hello. Hello, lady. Oh, no. No. Bad stabby. Aruga. Aruga. Right, okay. I don't like that. What's in here? There's stuff. There's stuff in here, folks. What? Is that a timer? What did I have to survive or something while I was waiting for that? Some of these guys didn't get up, which I probably shouldn't be pointing out. Okie dokie, artichoke. There's no saves here. I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like these rooms it's making me do. How long is this labyrinth? Oh, bugs. Oh, no. It's these guys. Fucking no. So it's going to be the same. It's on a timer. Just keep running. Just keep running. Auto saves here too, does it? Oh, no way. Oh, there's a guy in the wall. I haven't even seen you. Maybe I do have to kill them all. Doesn't seem to be... Oh, is the timer going up, going down? What's happening? What's happening here? I'm just looping them. Look at me! I'm playing... Mom! I'm playing Dead by Daylight! Yeah, you can last or you can kill them all. I think there are mandarins here. Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. Nobody is working on the generators. This is the problem. Alright, I got that one. Cool. Shoot their mouthy. Shoot their mouthy hands. If I can get through without using ammo, I might just do that. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Have they just stopped? If they have, that's fucking brilliant. What the fuck was that? Right, okay. Shoot their mouthy hands. Let's make sure I didn't miss anything on the way past there. James Sunderland, premium skin for the hit game Dead by Daylight. This is true. This game is a spin-off of Dead by Daylight. Confirmed. Confirmed! I have that game. I still have my 10 million blood points. I've started spending them. Tomahawk has been slowly guiding me through that game. Teaching me his ways. But he will not show me how to make a mustache. Which just makes me sad. I should grow a mustache like Tomahawk. I really wish I should. I leveled up a whole pile of Leon, and I got your man. Oh, what's the first fella called? Forget his name, but I made him bald with a beard and glasses, and I'm like, it's me. I'll be retiring, DVD. You were saying that earlier. That's fair enough. How am I getting past here? Oh! Sir? Sir. That did not go well. I'm what we call a sprout or a newbie who doesn't know. I'm the same. When does it simply grow a mustache like Tomahawk's for sports? Dwight! Dwight's his name. Let's correct me up at DBA and Silent Hill, Pyramid Head, and Cheryl and James. You have to buy extra? Yeah. I'll take a wee bit out of then. How long will it take to figure out this part? Right, it's okay. There's a strat bit then? Okay. Not just blast them. Because this shit's on me. He comes out of there. Right, that does nothing. First time, more so in a panic. I just have to get past him to bait him and then attack. Oh, no, he gets you. He gets you good. Oh, he's like a stretch. Let me past, would you? Oh, for fuck's sake. If I was still in my mid-20s, absolutely. Sammy, you are still in your mid-20s, I believe. In dog years, maybe? Is it not the other way around in dog years? Would you not be like 90? Okay. Squeeze through now, can we? Alright, okay. Up, down, 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 down. I wasted ammo doing that. I'm not happy about it. I'm going to tell myself it weakened him. He now fears me. Most people do that. Do you get that part? Yeah, they just panic, yeah. Oh, we made it back there. Happy days.
Maria.
Oh, she dead again. Maria, let her down. Let her down. What's this all about? Would you catch yourself on? Maria? Oh, Maria, you should have seen her. What did she die of? James is deep in thought. She died of a broken heart. Oh. Thatch. Or was it the shark? Or it could be both, Filmish. We can't rule them both out. Both can happen simultaneously. You wake up and go, boom. Mary. She's quite contrary, that one. Maria, did you have any ammo on you? No? No ammo?
What the hell?
Oh, I suppose this is where it was before. Oh! It's Zangetsu! There we go. I'll save. I'll save just before him, just in case. Right, doesn't know that's Ichigo's sword and bleach. And now we wield it. I will show you my bankai as I drag this heavy bit of metal. Zangetsu, where? Look, see? Oh. There we go. James has unlocked a new weapon. Can I swing it? I can't even wield it. James, walk in a straight line, kid. I know it's heavy, but basically half a scissor. The whole scissors couldn't cut it. So they're afraid of this, right? Okay. They're afraid of the pyramid head. You just killed Pyramid Head? No, I didn't kill him at all. He just chased me, and I found his sword sitting there. He must have went to the toilet and left his sword. He'll come out now and be like, "Oh, for fuck's sake, I'm gonna get sacked." I left my sword here, and it's gone. Hi, James. How are you climbing that up there? No offense, kid, but you know you're not exactly the most strong of men. Sword controls like a potato. More walking here than anything else in the game. Why did he not let go of it sooner if he wasn't planning to carry it up the ladder? Like, Pyramid Head's buff. Pyramid Head is in shape. Maybe step controls. Most powerful potato in the game. This is my Bankai. Itsuka Tenshu. Oh. Well, this looks a bit grave. That's the thing about these graveyards. People are dying to get in here. This fell and drank one last. Bottle of ale before he was executed. Oh, is this like people executed? Is it only gonna let me read the one of them? Miriam K. Trader? Okay. I'm sure this energy drink that's sitting here is going to be fine. Walter Sullivan. Can't read you. James Sutherland. This is James Sunderland, right? Okay. It's from A Memory of Sound Hill 4, right? Okay. Eddie Drombowski. Oh, Eddie, that's the other guy. Why is there graves for all these people? I don't like sometimes you can't. Angela, right? Okay. Ooh, that just confirms her surname's the same as. Well, we know it was her dad. So jump on my own grave. Okay. It's Raccoon City 5, it is. Yeah, the bad guy from Sound Hill 4. Would you fucking start? It does heavily hint towards loop theory, though, doesn't it? Don't you start it there. This is my stream. I'll start at 5. If I want to talk about the likelihood and benefits of loop theory when it comes to Silent Hill, I will. He's just jumped down his own hole. Ah, see, after really spicy food? Loop theory explains everything. It really does, you know. You know what doesn't explain everything? Not loop theory. Silent Loop's the theory. That sounds like a vinyl. That sounds like a record. That sounds like a #1 album that I would listen to. I don't know where I am now. I'm still in the prison. Still in the prison. Labyrinth, damn you. Endless prison simulator. Oh. Well, we're not getting our security deposit back. Definitely not. Look at the shape of this bus. Ooh, Eddie. What's happening, lad? How are we getting on?
Enough alone, huh? You just had to follow me all the way out here.
I don't think I was following you, but okay.
Do I have to kill you?
Ooh, what does it mean by that?
Eddie. Whoa, Eddie. It's me.
Oh. Hi,
Eddie, what the fuck?
Eddie.
Big long staircase. Water three.
What's it look like I'm doing? You fat, disgusting piece of shit! You make me sick. You gonna call
Eddie, calm the fuck down.
You gonna run to your mama? Waste of skin. Why don't you just kill yourself?
Eddie, I just climbed on my own grave, brother. Calm down. Look at the bodies in this room.
Maybe
I can't.
Right.
It's a cutscene. Okay, the camera shut down. I know, calm down.
Maybe I am. Nothing but a fat, disgusting piece of shit.
After
But
what?
You know what?
Stop you spoiling stuff.
It doesn't matter if you're smart,
Your interest rates are down.
ugly, pretty. It's all the same once you're dead. And a corpse can't laugh.
Is that me? Leyoric, I will be back. I need to go set up. Not a
What's
problem,
that?
Cody. I'll spoil you.
You want to talk
Yes,
down
that's
to
you.
me some more?
Hold on.
Tell me
Hold
to
on.
relax. You're just like the rest of
So
them,
you're
James.
adamant that there's no such thing as loop theory? but all the corpses are
You think I'm
James,
stupid?
who Eddie keeps having to
You
kill.
think I don't see it? But you've been laughing at me all along. Ever since we first met.
I'm sorry,
ain't laughing
Flemish is just
now, are
pointing
you?
more and more like Loop Theory. The James, it'll look like James is psychological. Or James is reliving the same events over and over again, and the bodies
Don't get all
are
holy
actual
on me,
previous
James.
versions of him being killed.
This town
I can't
calls
explain
me
to you,
too.
Finish. You don't explain anything. I figured it out myself.
Yeah.
Loop Theory.
You and me, we're the same. We're not like other people, don't you know that?
Fuck your Loop Theory.
You're about to find out.
GG's. You just beat the final boss. I figured it out. Is Flemish the final boss? Is that what's happening? Aye, they're all me. It all makes sense. These are all different variations of me. What's this one over here doing? How's that pipe? Is it all cleaned? Is it sorted? I mean, the evidence is there. I know. The non-loop theory evidence isn't there, though. Every corpse you've seen in the game looks like James to James. Or it's previous versions of James, because the events of this game keep looping over and over again. It is actually Leon Kennedy. When he let himself go, he had the kick. The body in the street at the start, the person that he killed, and now here. Yeah, they're all James, because they keep looping the same events over and over again. Lamash, how did we not see this before? Do you recognize that chin? No, Lou. No, Lou. You can't go to the bathroom. No, Lamash is denying himself a bathroom. It all started with that first chocolate eclair. Chocolate eclair is a good one to start with. If you're going to ruin your life, chocolate eclair is a good way to go. Bottles are off Lemish's attempts to tell Eddie it's not loop theory. Loop theory takes away the weight of the story. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Loop theory means that James is stuck in this cycle over and over again in his own grief. Fucking does. Just because you're loud and you're shouting doesn't mean you're right. Tale as old as time. Many comment for Hook, it was a turnover. The turnovers that I'm on, right? So it's hate this house. All right, I feel like this is going to be a boss. Oh, this is a good place to meet people. Unsub. Oh yeah, that's my thing. I know.
When you're hated, picked on, spit on, just because of the way you look? Yeah, I ran away after I killed that dog. But you know what? It was
Can't
fun.
claim it for his. I'll turn this stream right around.
Some guts up. Finally died all curled up in a ball. Then he came after me. I shot him too, right in the leg. He cried more than the
Tale as
dog.
old as time. Look at this crime. It is a peak. I bags. I hate this house. Yep, Hook bags it. That's it. It's done now. I can't. I hear him. Fuck.
Finding Leyoric.
Ah, shoot, there's himself. Ian, how are you getting on, lad?
Shall we say the rarest gym badge in Kanto? You'll usually find it somewhere making dad jokes, you know?
Yeah, I'm down.
Yeah, but like you're one of those like
Fuck
shiny
it,
ones
I'm
that everyone
Eddie, would
has
ya?
because they were like in a special drop event or something like that, you
Come
know?
on, James.
He's fucking fast, isn't he? Eddie. Hold on, I'm going to greet Ian. Ian, how are you getting on? Ian has been unwell this past week, so I have missed his streams. Now, Ian streaming is normally the indication I have for feeding my children, so they have starved. I hope you're proud of yourself, Ian. But I also hope you're feeling better. However, stream next week to make up for the lack of streams this week. Ian, so glad to see you. Thank you very much for calling in. Anyone in my chat that isn't following Ian, he is a fellow Irish streamer, but as you heard by his melodic voice, he has a wonderful tone to his voice. Really chill stream. Lovely community. And definitely go give him a follow. Well, fuck me, it's great to see that name popping up. How are we? I've been suffering at my day job because you've been gone. Cheers. Yeah, 2 weeks out of work with it. Awful dose, but thankfully it was super. It's taking the time as well. They rest up. You probably need it as well because you have quite a heavy streaming schedule. Where are you, you bastard? I can see where kinda you are, but
I can see.
and I can see you too, dickhead.
Come on, James. Don't be shy.
Oh, got him. Oh, phase 2. Maybe not yet. Don't make your problem. In all seriousness, hope you're doing well. Yeah, Ian, we have missed you. Everybody's missed you.
And then you'll just curl up and die.
I can see less now.
It's gonna feel great.
I think he's going to get up close and personal. Leyoric does not speak for me. I do speak for him. I control Flemish now. He is mine. No. Hear me out. Try cast on roof. That would do it. That would do it. Or night vision. Love is there for sure. 100%. Oh, I can hear him. Where the fuck are you? There you are. Come on, Eddie. Of course, I have a light, you don't, dickhead. Sleeping lot, some days only awake for 6 to 8 hours. Oof. Man, it must have been harsh. I hate being sick. Hate being sick. For God's sake, even your bot is on about loop theory. Yes! Yes! Loop theory. That's the name of the game. Oh, great. Let's add another dimension to this. All the moving pieces. Oh, fuck. Right, okay. Right, we're going back to rifle then. Okay. Or is it a bit of both? Is it a bit of both? Never had a dose like it. My chest, visible breathing from coughing. My God, man. Oh, I can see him now. Hell, no. I'm just catching up with chat. Never seen Sammo hung them. He does move with some speed, doesn't he? He's a ninja. I'll tell you, man, just a couple of RPG be done with. If I would, if I could, I didn't buy one. Kung Fu Panda style. Back me. More than just a dose. Is it inedible? What about Panda Express? What? YouTube show. Yeah, what was the show he was in years ago? I forget the name of it. It was kind of like Rusher before Rusher, but in TV show form. I see you. Oh no, do I see you? I do. There you are. No, I shot you. You don't shoot me back. That's not how we do this. He's shooting me, mate. Folks, he keeps shooting me, mate. Eddie, I know you're jealous that you're not in Dead by Daylight, but there's nothing I can do about it. It's not my decision, kid. I can't even rely on the noise. I don't agree with that. I shot him. Why does he get to shoot me back? How about you don't? Yeah, got him. Got him. Martial law, that was the show. Yes. Bit of the flash kick and Tekken. You shot first. I know. Stand still, let me shoot you. Don't let's be good manners. Thank you, Eddie. This is a good place to meet. I like it. Fourth base unbound. Better fucking not be. Better not be. I tell you what. Pearl Jam cameo. Eddie Deader. Even though. I wasted a lot more ammo than I really wanted there. Is there any pickups here? Eddie, do you have anything for me? No, just a dead corpse. Any ammo at all? Anything? No. What would happen if you came in here and you had no ammo? Would it give you some? Anything? Get the bathroom with your pipe. Oh, hey! Eddie killed a dog. He deserved what he got. You know what? I'm not arguing with you, Sarah. I don't disagree with what you're saying there. Plus, his biggest crime was eating the ice cream with his hand. That's where he really went wrong in life. Any items at all? Eddie letter. Hey, smash the meat. Break the carrots. Sword fight. I mean, if it's melted, you just drink it. Yeah. But why not just use a spoon, Eddie? Just use a spoon. I don't know which way I'm supposed to be going. I'm assuming it's along the pier. That's how it would appear. So I'm just going to check to see if there's any items lying about. There we go. We drink out of them. Nom 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 nom. Nom 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 nom. Ooh, what are you? What's the crack with these pictures? I keep collecting them. Strange photos. What are these all about? How the time flies. Investigate. Flip. There'll be numbers on the back as well. Did they have to go in particular order? These little collectibles, usually things related to puzzles, are part of the journey. Isn't that what Rob McElhenney was saying? They put on the weight. Drink ice cream? Yeah! That's what he was saying. Just burgers and ice cream. But just let it melt and just drink it like a milkshake. Just the calories. Was him I was thinking of. But he's just Rob Mac now as well, isn't he? He recently changed his stage name because nobody could pronounce McElhenney. I refuse to call him by that stupid name. Are you not the guy who goes by Flimosh? Hey, thank you for signing the ledger. Are we close to beating the boss? Hold on, the boss bar will appear now. Party level 191 as well. Close. Ooh, not that far at all. Close. Oh, a little drunk. Ah, okay. The Polaroids are just for friends. The friends we made along the way. Ian, thank you for signing them as well. Level 10, right? Oh, I have to... Right, I have to sail a boat. Sail away. Sail away, sail away, sail away. But who's taking the Polaroids? Is it James in his previous loops? They leave messages to himself? Is that what's happening? Because of loop theory? I think so. It's my belief. Ah! I keep going the wrong way. I sweat the fuck? Why are you sweating the fuck? Is it that warm, Flemish? He's sweating the fuck. Sierra, would you get that man a cold drink? Too late. Yep, you can't correct it now. Please don't sweat, you'll ruin your keyboard. Lauren will be upset at all the sweating. Sail away. Stop it. I pressed both. Stop it. James. Anyone else who forgive that typo? He'll survive. He's got an air conditioner going. He'll be fine then. So Jesus. To be fair, sweating like crazy these past few days. Even when it's not been overly sunny, it's been close like. Oh, oh, so it's making me go the other way now. James, where the fuck? Where the fuck? Where the fuck, James? Come on. You're at James! Alright!
Very good.
Lazy, what's happening? Can't row straight. Good saver. Yeah. Old Timu Leon Kennedy here. Even have been sunny. It's been muggy. It's been close. Too much information. Let me tell you. One of the worst parts of being 6 feeling it in the heat. Oh, that's even worse than I ever thought of, Ian. My god. Heavy warm air, you feel you can't breathe. Row your boat right into the fog. Soon you'll be eaten by a mutated Silent Hill dog. Where the fuck? James? You will not become a nautical sailor. Some describe the heat as being the same heat you feel when you walk behind a bus. What? Being hungover in a heat wave was a regret I had an experience. I haven't been drinking, so thank God I haven't experienced that. I've never heard anything more accurate. I don't normally walk behind buses. I normally climb under them. But you do, it's fine. What about if it's an electric bus? Anyway, a lot of them now are electric. Anyway. The whoosh of bastard bus air. Quality from the exhaust in the rear of the bus. Ah, but they're all electric now. Been close. Closer than you can imagine. Close. The exhaust in the back of the bus when it pulls up to you something and hot and humid shite. Right, okay. Ooh. We sunbathe? Did anybody leave me an energy drink? No. No. Of course they didn't. Because they fucking hate me. Got a map. Got a map. Mapping the place where we are. But nobody left ammo at the dock because they're all bastards. Just because there's a lot of cloud cover doesn't mean the UV is low. Put that sun cream on, James, for fuck's sake. James has the hair that he doesn't even need it. Why is there so many ice cream trucks? The people in Silent Hill love their ice cream. Ooh, what's this? No. Glasses. Glasses. Everybody raise your glasses. Sail away, sail away, sail away. Well, this is pretty. As a bald man as well, I have to be very, very careful out in the sunshine. Even when it's not that sunny. It's not too bad now, but see when I first shaved my head, because it was like virgin baby skin on top of my scalp, I would sunburn really, really quickly and really easily.
Changed it all in 3 years.
What's this? It's an apple. Collected rotten apple. Why? Why would I want this? Eat it. Lone one of the east, out of the water he's safe, now lost, out of breath. Seems a bit fishy to me. No one can hear ice cream. Yes, Teddy. Yes. I look like a fish in the morning. Ah. This section of the garden is closed for maintenance. We can't open that chain with the rotten apple. Who would have thunk it? Who would have thunk it? Oliver Plunkett. Handgun ammo. Oh, that shit, you can't. Well, this is true. This is true. It lacks vitamin key. Ian, you haven't fucking lost it at all. You legend. Lacks vitamin key. That was a stretch. No! Jesus, not was not. Because I was trying to use it to open a lock. And it's an apple, so there's vitamin C in it. Ooh, music. Welcome back. Welcome back, eh? Hmm? No loop theory, and the science is welcome back. Explain that one, Flemish. Explain it. Listen here. Back of the bus, man. I will explain it.
Our room.
Fuck you. Jesus, so aggressive. So much aggression from that man. Fuck you. Jesus, Flemish. Why are you the way you are? Be Tomahawk. Just beat him. Succulently? You'll describe it succulent, maybe? I don't even know what I'm spelling right now. It's okay. On the next loop, you can spell. Fine. What is this? Running apple can't open this. We have to keep an eye on that apple. Apple Watch. Jesus! Fucking McKenns. For the love of God, help me here with this loop theory nonsense. Ooh, keys. Music box, there we go. That got me. Oh, got me too. It got me too. And it's mostly because there's a window right beside me here. If I was in any other orientation in the room, it would have been fine. It's because there's a window right there. It sounds like someone's just outside knocking at me. Someday it's going to happen. Someone's actually going to knock on the window and I'm going back, that's McKinn's way routine. I'm not fault with that one. Double success. He's so proud of himself. And McKinn's, you know what? You should be. That's a lot. Oh, it's a cafe. I thought it was the pub. See, if we had came into the bar, we were living here, folks. It looks like a bar, but it's just all... no, it is. It is. It's a bar. Lads, we've made it home. We're in the pub. We're sweet. We live here now in Silent Hill, in the bar. Fine. It's fine. It's grand. This is a key for 102. Ooh. First time you had that redeem was during Song of Horror. Oh, I know. Oh, I know. And it was fierce. Took away the jump scare redeem. I did. Because the problem with the jump scare, it was far too loud. And I did have it for a while in StreamerBot, where it was louder for me than it was for you. But I haven't been able to recreate that again because now all my audio comes through StreamerBot. Because I moved away from using browser sources for my redeems. So they work all the time instead of intermittently like before. Mannequin Skywalkers. Remember a very strange book you found there, something very old that came a few hours, claimed to belong to him. Honestly, it didn't feel like arrogant, just went through. I'm not sure even knew you were there. I don't think I got the guess here. I would have remembered. Leyoric, thank you for the stream. I'm going to head off. Ted, thank you very much for coming on. Been an absolute pleasure. Burton had a certain fart team that always looked right when I went off. Never understood why until I was playing Ark with him, and it went off, and I looked to my right to see he farted. Probably just whatever way it's set up with the headphones. Good night, Teddy. Thank you very much for coming on. I don't know what the point of this room was. Unless there's something I'm missing. Beat the internet. That's what back right here. We got the key for the music box as well, which is nice. Right, okay. Let's go open this music box. But I swear to God, with headphones on, sound like someone that a big ripper beside. Maybe it was Thorn. Maybe we don't know. What is this? Oh, there's extra items I need, right? Okay. Well, we've opened it. These are locked. Thorn farted. He'd be flying look at the plated building. Because he's tiny. He's just a little boy. He's just a baby. He's just a baby. Who's playing piano? Exactly, Tomahawk. It's a Konami game. Needs Konami opening. Staff only. I'm Staff. John Staffman. Don't trust all these sheets. There's a mannequin somewhere. Not a mannequin.
It was
fucking...
perfect. Perfect.
Did I scare
Everything, down to the last minute details.
Thorn floating sheet.
The fart face that I am.
Maybe. Then again, maybe you're not so bad. Just annoying.
Uh-huh. So, you got any other things planned? I think I saw a dark room back there you could lock me up in.
No. I think you've had enough. For now.
Quick, James, shoot her.
That's reassuring.
Besides, I need your help finding Mary. She's here. Isn't she? Come on, tell me.
This little twerp
I wish I knew.
But she said it in her letter.
Wait. So there really is a letter?
Oh. Yeah. Want to read it?
Yeah.
Just don't tell Rachel, okay?
Who's Rachel?
She's our nurse. I took it from her locker.
Our nurse. Right, okay.
My dearest Laura, I'm leaving this letter with Rachel to give to you after I'm gone. I'm far away now, in a quiet, beautiful place. Please forgive me for not saying goodbye before I left. Be well, Laura. Don't be too hard on the sisters. And Laura, about James. I know you hate him because you think he isn't nice to me, but please, give him a chance. It's true, he can be a little surly sometimes, and he doesn't laugh much. But underneath, he's a really sweet person. I love you, Laura. I love you like my very own daughter. I wish things were different. I wish we could be happy together, like we talked about.
Oh, is she going to adopt her?
I know you will have a good life. You're a strong, smart, beautiful girl. Happy 8th birthday, Laura. Your friend, Mary.
Laura. How old are you?
I turned 8 last week.
But Mary died 3 years ago.
That means Mary couldn't have died 3 years ago.
My husband's a bit of a dweeb. Don't blame him. That's what Leyoric actually says. It seems like something Sierra would write.
Is this the
Plot thickens.
quiet, beautiful place she was talking?
You know what? I suspect my neighbour is putting soil from his garden into my garden. I don't have any evidence yet, but the plot thickens.
Talking about?
Me and Mary talked a lot about Silent Hill. She even showed
Fuck
me all
me.
the pictures.
No, no. I don't think I will.
She really wanted to
But I
come back.
appreciate the offer. I'm sick again.
She also talked a lot about you, you know? She even...
What? What is it?
Well, it kind of was his other letter. I think the one was for you. The envelope had your name on it.
Did you read it?
I wanted to. This one time, I almost did. Figured you didn't deserve to have it. But then I thought, Mary wouldn't want me to keep it from you. So I just sort of kept it for you. Here.
Ooh. New letter. She's more efficient than Royal Mail.
It's empty. Laura, there's
You
nothing
get
in it.
nothing.
What? But I didn't take it. I swear.
Well, where is it then?
I must have lost it. I gotta find it.
Laura!
3 years to deliver a letter. Still, you know, she could do well as a posting. Here, piano. Ooh, what does he play if you press the button? No idea. James, you're not a musician. We found it out. Dog and it's Cleo and Thorn. There we go. Figured it out. We figured it out. Or flip-flopping to bullying James is always suspicious. It is, but then again, everything James does is incredibly suspicious too. Right. I'm going to need to go up the stairs then.
Laura!
Oh, where's she away now? That the follower? I don't go up the stairs yet. How did she get this opened?
It's time to stop. It's time to stop, okay?
No!
No more. Where the fuck are your parents? Who are your parents? I'm gonna call Child Protective Services. It's time to stop.
Oh, what do you think was going to happen? What do you think was going to happen? You get the better of me, were you? No! My God. James Bourne. Jesus Christ. Housekeeping has not been doing due diligence in this hotel. This room is a mess. The blinds aren't even pulled. The sheets are dirty. I am leaving 3 out of 5 complaint. Because even though I'm clearly upset about it and not happy, I'm Irish, so there's a certain weird fear of being judgmental. Aftermath. Some shady. Yes, that's where I keep my rifle rounds. Just want to explore without squelchiness. Stop attacking the ones on the floor, James. We have talked about this. Where did you keep your round rifle? What? Where do you keep your round rifle? What? What are you talking about? You said that's where I keep my rifle rounds. Said where do you keep your round rifle? Okay, buddy. How much have you had to drink? It was a dumb joke, incredibly dumb joke. Did you have too much woo-woo sauce? I had 2 whiskeys. Sean Mitchell. No memory of Sean Mitchell. Right, okay. Although there were quads, so it's not 2, it's 4. Oh, God. Can't even count, he's so drunk. Quick, Sierra, take advantage of him. Have your wily way with him now. He's been inebriated. What room number is this? 102, right? I do have the key for that. Or 8 singles. Wait, 4 doubles. Jesus Christ, you really can't count. Yes, that is a lot. That is a lot of whiskey then. That's a very whiskey endeavor. And I shall have another quad now. You know what? You're a grown-ass adult. Enjoy yourself. Treat yourself. And there's a hole. Of course there is. A veranda. We must have paid extra for this. We're mushing the whiskey business tonight, yes, definitely. The hoppiest of all scotches. You know what? This place does look nice. I say it. I'm just going to say it. It was nice. It does seem like it, doesn't it? You know, it's run down now, but, you know, back in the day, it probably was lovely. What the fuck was that? Oh, it was like a leaf. It was Keanu Reeves. Run down. This is it in perfection. Right, okay. Fair dues. Fair dues. So it is. So it is. Am I in a new part of the... No, I'm just down further on down the corridor. What was the point of that room opening? I don't understand the point of that veranda. If it was just open anyway. Your staff, we can get in there. Oh, Jesus. Fuck, you got me good. You actually got me. Oh, that was a good one. That was a good one. You got me good. I wasn't expecting you hiding there. Fair play. Woo. I think it sticks me back right to where I was earlier. Oh. Who's up and about? What are you doing? Where did you come out of? Right, so I'm going to go down towards this utility room. Anything down here? No, nothing of interest. There's going to be a fucker hiding down here. No. What are you? Sun key? Sunrise wing key, right, okay. It's a winky! No, wing key. It's a winky. I think that's everything in this room. Vitamin Winky. That sounds like just a really badly named general. Ooh, do not disturb. Having sex. I also don't have a room key for this one. I have 312, so I can go upstairs for that one. Well, let's see. Where else?
How are you still alive?
Ian, thank you so much for the sub. I appreciate it, buddy. I changed the redeem as well. I did have the Resident Evil map one, and then it was taking up too much of the screen. It was too over the top, I thought. For the Winky. Oh man, you never have to sub, but I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll go out here saying this did open up for me. I assumed I was already out here anyway in the veranda. What's that? What is the gate? Is that what that sunrise thing's for, maybe? Maybe it takes me out there in the garden. I haven't gone upstairs yet. No. No. None of these things. Right, okay. That's that. Right, okay. So Ian, you back then on Monday? Is Monday the big day? Oh, a basement? I haven't been in here. Or have I been in here? I have been in here. This is where I first came on. Fuck. Right, okay. I swear to God, see if my son's outside swinging that stick about in the backyard. Fucking is too, the wee half-foot. So, my wee boy is, for some reason, has got it in his head that he really wants to swing. He really wants to swing a stick about the backyard, and he's been doing it for fucking days now. And that's him there out the backyard. Just swinging a stick about. And that's what I heard. It was like a pipe falling out the back. It's like a metal pole. It's actually a curtain rod. And he's just out swinging it about like a ninja. Look at him. Look at him there. Look at him. Thinks he's all cool. Thinks he's all cool. He's been practicing. That's a sword. He wishes. He wishes. But he keeps dropping it and cutting himself, and it's funny. At least he's outside. That's true. That's true. But he's scaring me. He's scaring me. Yeah, I will be. Tempted to try yesterday, but I reckon I'll be better just waiting. Yeah. Come back fresh on Monday. Is it still going to be like Final Fantasy 11 when you come back as well? God forbid the wine is a hobby. He goes to the gym and is in better shape than most people I've ever met. He's out the back swinging a stick about. He's just a weirdo. We've all been there, lad. He's fighting off visions only he can see. He's James Sunderland. He's in Loop Theory. He's on Silent Hill. He is. Except he's in a different place called Noisy Mound. Don't you start with it. He's just a weirdo. He's your son. How fucking dare you? I am surprised. Like, I did start off joking about the whole Loop Theory thing, but I'm now actually surprised at how strong the theory is. Lenny, what's happening? Hey, what's correct? Maybe it's a storm. Maybe he is the storm that's approaching. Maybe he is Virgil. It's not even remotely strong. It's incredibly strong. Incredibly. Lenny, how are you getting on? What is it? Lenny is an absolute legend. What are you streaming at the moment? Twilight Princess as well. You do stream quite a bit of Zelda too. Met you through Ready Crash. How are you feeling about Ocarina of Time remake? I've only recently played Ocarina of Time, so I enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. It was through Shiba Arcadian I played it, and I'd say it'd be interesting if it's done well. It'd be good to get that story kind of redone and nicer graphics. I think for the likes of Burton and stuff, it might be still a bit too easy if they already know everything in it. I was making one of my friends watch me play it. Oh, very good. Very good. Leyoric Jr. is actually Leyoric, but Loop Theory. Oh, mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. For lads in Stephen King's Dairy. Is. Yeah, I don't think I've asked Burton about his opinion on it yet. I think it'll be an experience. He'll enjoy it, but he's still busy streaming it himself. Wolf Gremlin. With the Riz Tiz. It's a good watch. Happy Irish. You can see what happened there, can't you? Yes. Yes. You know, who like that? Look, you menace. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. To be honest, a lot of the remakes being done recently are actually really well done. Like, see the Resident Evils, this game, Final Fantasy VII. I'm enjoying these old classics getting revitalized again, even if they are very different. Which part of that was blocked? One of the words is offensive and it was blocked. I'll allow it as it's the American version. It's not really though. 6 letters, it seems. The silent 6 letters, it's true. There's so many games I need to play. I'll be busy. The Larn word was blocked. Allowing to deny, this would have been my first actual mod thing to do. But I figured it'd be biased because of the shared first name. You mean the silent 6 layers in front of the area? That is true. That's the ones. It's the secret ones. We tell nobody about them. They're secret. It's only us allowed them. But yeah, like Resident Evil 2 remake, so good. So good. Resident Evil 4 remake, brilliant. This, phenomenal. Go to the big screen. And Final Fantasy VII remake as well. I can't wait for the 3rd installment of it. It's going to be fun. I've started playing the remake offline and recording it because I was going to stream Rebirth, but I realized I don't have a VOD for remake, and it made me feel sad I didn't have the whole collection. Big Leo! Big Leo. Silent London, hey. You miss the shots you don't take. This is also true. Also, toss up for me between RT remake and say which would consider the better remake. I think they're both different. This is definitely a better story. It's creepier and it's unnerving. Where I think with Resident Evil 2 remake, it's good, it's scary at the start, but then you feel very overpowered then afterwards. FF7 stream. I know, Ian. I know. So I've streamed remake before, but I wasn't at a point where I was recording my VODs and uploading them to YouTube, so I'm going to do that now and just do it separately. It just means I can do it in my own time. Rare Waffles and his D&D Hippo someday. What? D&D Hippo? They both manage to be authentic while extended. Exactly, yeah. But yeah, there in general, you start out weak and then overpowered by the end. That is authentic. Mounty Dairy. I love Silent Hill 2, but loads of fun when I played. Yeah, that's true. That is true. Silent Hill 2 Dread just never seems loved. It doesn't, and the game just keeps scaring you and keeps making it worse and worse as you go. It's so unnerving. It's the audio, I think, in this game more than anything. It's the sound design in this game. It constantly makes you feel uneasy and creeps you out and keeps you on edge. And even if there's nothing there, it still gets you. Sound design is peak. Oh, so good. See when the sound design's done well in a game, it's phenomenal. Like, I love that about Final Fantasy VII Remake as well. The fact that there were so many callbacks to the original game that just kind of the nostalgia hit and the feels hit with it as well. Are we wrapping up the stream now? Yeah, so I'm going to wrap up and raid out. I thought we made a good point. Hopefully I finish it in the next stream. I think we're nearly out of the prison, but loop theory means we keep going back to the prison, so God knows what's going to happen. God knows. Thank you so much, everybody came in. Thank you for the subs. Thank you for everybody chatting. Thanks for the biddies. These are so generous. Glad I caught you. Lenny, thank you so much again. I appreciate it. Nah, you're just doing the prologue. I'm on the prologue. For God's sake, Sierra, I didn't know. We're looping. I've seen it. Still unnerving. It could also be Miss Son is about to throw something through the window. Pineapple King. There he is. Look at him. GG. Thank you, folks. So we will be back, hopefully playing Resident Evil 6 with Hook on Tuesday. Resident Evil 2 speedruns on... Actually, I have to change up. Why don't I just bring That would make sense, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? Hey, Joe. So, Resident Evil 6 co-op with Hook on Tuesday. Just quick. Resident Evil 2 speedrun training on Wednesday, and then back to Silent Hill Thursday, Saturday. I'm hoping to find something Thursday, and then we'll move on to something else, but we'll see. We'll see. You may find something. If not, you need to do something after that on Saturday. We'll just go with Flamaster's house and just look in the window at him, the camera. But we're going to raid out now. I'm going to see what cool people are live at the moment and who we can raid. You know what? Actually, Kira's playing Resident Evil 2. We haven't raided the Kira in a hot minute. Akira is a friend of the stream. Colin earlier as well, but he plays a lot of Resident Evil as well. Does lots of challenge runs and stuff. Great shout. Now, if you come here, you're more than welcome. You're more than welcome in for a cup of tea or coffee. Ooh, very nice. Hey, thank you so much, folks. I appreciate you. These are absolute legends. I will catch you in your own streams. Or tomorrow night, we'll be back streaming, so we'll catch him for some Darksiders too. I'm going to start the raid up, and then we're going to see if we've beat the boss. Has the check-ins worked? This is going to populate a raid message, but it's also going to come up with the boss as well. And we're going to see if we beat him, and does everybody level up tonight. Don't keep us waiting. He's dead! He's beat him! He's been defeated. Everybody who checked in tonight goes up one more level. Well done. Look how intently he's watching. I was sitting there going, is this going to work? Because I know it's the first time since we've had the bar. And I was on the bar definitely filled. So is it going to work? That was loud. You're fucking loud. So we're going to raid on the Akira. The top message is for followers. Bottom one is for subs. If you could say hello to him, that'd be much appreciated. And thank you again, folks. And I will catch you all later. Bye-bye.
Let's